Pod in My Noggin, hosted by CK Sims, creating a platform to elevate, educate, and heal by creating a space where people can share their stories of struggle, triumph, and redemption. CKS Media.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Pod in My Noggin. Today, we are joined by, how would you say that? Multi-book author K.A. Oliver. Latest book is Disturbing Remains. It's the second in a series, the first book being Disturbed Tombs. And it's an historical fiction book. Welcome, Kay. And it's Kay how you go? That's your first name?
Yes, Kay.
Perfect. So welcome to Pod in My Noggin, Kay. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. I enjoy being here. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, I'm actually very excited about talking to you. And the reason I'm really happy about talking to you is when you sent your form, everyone fills out a form to let me know like the different points. There are a couple things that stood out, right? The author thing stood out. Another one stood out. But you're the first person who might have had some Hollywood clout that's applied to be on the show or asked to be on the show. And so obviously I was like, huh? Spielberg? Okay, this could be an interesting conversation. But your story, I think, is kind of very like, yeah, you have the Hollywood thing and that sort of thing, but I think the story behind everything is also quite lovely, even with the not lovely, bad choice of words, little tongue tied today. What I mean is, it's a great story despite the Hollywood part.
It's an adventure or a journey. Yes, absolutely.
Yes, on its own. So why don't we start at the beginning?
I'm sorry?
Let's start at the beginning. So how did you end up in Hollywood? Like were you born to start with?
Well, first I was born in Detroit, Motown. Came out to California when my dad got a job very young. I entered a speech contest in 6th grade and won. I knew that my writings were very good because at first they accused my parents of writing my speech and they did not. So I knew I had something going on. And I loved stories and poetry and all of that. Did drama, did speaking, public speaking, did very well. And when I went to go get a degree, I decided, well, Hollywood is a different format of storytelling. So I got my degree from Cal State Fullerton in radio, TV, film, and then went on to get a degree, master's degree in business. And I worked in TV news for a little while. I was a writer and got pulled into having to do the news because somebody was out sick and quickly said, behind the cameras for me, not in front of it. I'm a very private person, so to speak. Open, but private. And cameras weren't around on your phones back then. So I think making that decision was a good one. I worked in Hollywood for many years. I went through a lot of things that people are now beginning to see, the light coming out. I would turn in screenplays. I had a first and last when I worked at DreamWorks. And it would be, oh, great screenplay, good story, but your lead character is a strong, independent female, and they're not marketable. I think that's what was said, but I don't believe that. It's changing a little bit in the industry, yes, because women, are fighting for equal pay, right? So if you're a lead actress with a lead actor, you should be getting the same kind of pay. And when you get that kind of pay, you can start your production companies. Yeah. Right? So then you can start making those films. And then it is changing a little bit because women are more vocal about it, or they are going to see those films. And, the box office is what preaches to the studios. So, so I went ahead and eventually, and I think you're going to cover this when you ask me about some other stuff, I took the leap into writing my own novels and stepped out saying, I know these characters are marketable. And it is proven to be the case.
It's interesting. Like my two examples that come fresh off my mind is like Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer
Yeah,
Aniston, right?
yeah, right,
They went and they started their own production companies. And like, I mean, Reese has done a ton of like a female led excellent box office
hmm
results. Like, um, and I think that that was a perception in Hollywood that women wouldn't sell as
sports
a
as
lead.
well, right? Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But we can see with Caitlin Clark that that's not necessarily true, right? So
correct.
there's so many. We're still and I mean people who watch me regularly will know that I'm a feminist and I've always been a feminist. So like I think it's one of those things that we're actually seeing some major shifts in certain areas. Like, so women's sports this past year is like really took a big jump, which I'm super excited about. And then just overall storytelling for women being in lead roles. Look at Barbie. That's a
Right.
prime example, right? Like a monster in the box office, but female led. And then I think we're starting to see some other examples too, especially in even more marginalized, like so BIPOC women, right? Are their stories are starting to come out and they're showing up in the box office and people are coming out to see them. They're paying the money to go see them. So it's
But
just very interesting.
you still have the Oscar issue with Barbie. The same
Oh,
thing that
yes.
Barbara Streisand had with Yentl. So
Yes. So I think that we see shifts, but we still have so far to go,
yes,
especially when you're talking about like equal pay. Like we're still having these conversations. There are, women out there spearheading and speaking up and all of that sort of thing. And I think you're starting to see women come in on a lot more of a sort of a confident footing to say like no, like you don't work my one of the things that I I like the actors on Actors Roundtable that you can see sometimes when you watch that. And Jessica Chastain was saying that she was on a movie and they were indicating that they couldn't do her deal until after they did the male counterparts deal, and that she said no, like you do my deal now. And I think we're seeing stuff like that happen. But yeah, and it's not just Hollywood either. It's every industry,
correct,
everything.
correct.
Um, so I mean, you have in here that so you were writing, you were work. Did you say you were working for DreamWorks?
Yes, which is Spielberg and Katzenberg. Correct.
So what was that like? Besides
That was
being told that your screenplays were amazing and like everything was amazing, but your strong female leads are not going to
be marketable.
market.
Um, that's what made my decision to take a leap. I knew better than that. It's hard to break through a glass ceiling, especially as a solo person, trying to do it. It has to be a movement. It has to be respected. As far as they're concerned, they have to see the box office, and they had not, portrayed women in good, healthy roles for many years. The industry uh, is very male dominated, and very few. I think that one was, CEOs of a studio as female. So it's still that way on many levels. And you could only fight so much. You could only point things out so much, especially as a woman. Even if you do it properly, you are considered a problem child.
Yeah,
Right? Oh, there she goes again. Right?
yeah,
Um, Even though you're doing the same thing that a man's saying. I had a great mentor that worked at the studio who kind of taught me how to do it. Not losing my femininity, but not sounding like I'm whining or complaining or whatever. And I would present, the issue and the solution, but it doesn't matter because they're looking at you as, oh, you know, yeah, she's presenting X. And, I had a place where I was getting $20,000 less than my coworker. And when I presented that, the question wasn't, oh, let's correct that. How should we correct that? It was, how did you know?
Mm.
Right? Other things that have been said to me over time, where they gave a man a raise, and I went into my boss's office. I had more degrees, I had more experience, and I was told that he has kids at home. It's the reason he got the raise. So things like that, I know that I fought for what I wanted. I know that I was, um, I don't want to say the word harassed or bullied in senses that, because I did, but I want the people behind me, the women behind me, to be stronger and have more opportunities than I did when I was going through it. So I did my best, and I picked my battles. You have to pick your battles. Can't
Yes.
fight for everything. Then you do become a problem child. But it was what it was, and I got to a point where I'm like, well, you know what? I'm going to show them they're wrong.
I love that.
Yeah.
So you spent many years at Sounds. And do you mind me asking like what year that was?
Oh, well, the last time I still have friends I work in Hollywood with, but not in Hollywood. Probably about 10 years ago.
Okay. So you were just constantly sloughed off and probably maybe avoided or treated a little differently because you were someone who would stand up for themselves.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then, it's interesting because like my brain works in mysterious ways. Oprah had a very similar experience to you when she was doing network before the show started. And her co-anchor got a raise, and their response to her saying, "Well, I get a raise," was, "Well, because he has a wife and kid." And I'm like, mind-boggling to me,
Yeah.
right? Like
Is
I
it?
was born in '81, so like I didn't become an adult really until like almost 2000. In my brain, it just like does not compute to me how you can pay someone because their circumstances are different. Like you're doing
Right.
the same job, right? Like,
Is it 9 to 5 or 5 to 9 you're paying me for? Right? Is
well,
it right? So that's
exactly.
exactly what I said to my boss. Is it 9 to 5 or 5 to 9? Because I can go out and adopt kids. That wouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, but I wonder what their excuse would be then,
Exactly.
right? If they're always looking for an excuse or a loophole, what would it be then? So, 10 years ago, you decided to make a shift in your life. What prompted that? Like, what was the final straw really in that process?
I think because I've gone through a couple of things while I worked in Hollywood, and I learned to believe in myself and to trust myself. And I decided that my love and my passion has been writing. I have made short films, I've entered contests, I've produced, directed, um, and I wanted creative control. I didn't want anybody saying, you can't do that, you can't write that, she wouldn't do that. You get so much of that, you get put down so much as a woman, where people step over you or talk over you or things like that. That I said, I think I've done my time. I think I paid my dues, because I kept hearing that you have to pay your dues. Wait, I've been in the industry 30 years. What dues? So and I took the leap.
And so, what did the leap look like at first for you? Like, you had your like safety stash, like you were all ready to just leave Hollywood and turn this into a book building business, essentially.
Yeah, I had at least a year's salary that I'd been putting away, putting quite a bit away, and I already had started writing my first book, which is Disturbed Tunes, and
Yeah.
it was ready to go out. And I actually literally published it while I was still working. The other thing is you have to be very, very careful that you're not working during hours that they're employing you, right? Because if they like the book and they want to claim that, oh, we want that story, you wrote it on our time, I had to make sure different computer, do it at home only, don't intertwine anything. And the book came out, and it won it won first place in a book contest, and I was like, what? So then it ended up winning Book of the Year. So I knew I was onto something. And and I just continued like my book is at an editor right now that'll be coming out in July. And while that book's being edited, I start writing my next book. And I write pretty fast and pretty quickly. So I just continued writing my books after that.
How many books have you written?
I am on number 9 is with the editor, and I'm writing number 10.
So it's like almost like a book a year?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. Book a year. That's a pretty good amount, I think, a book a year. You had mentioned in your form that you are a breast cancer survivor.
I am a breast cancer survivor. That is something that helped me make my decision to leave, because when I was diagnosed with breast cancer about 14 years ago, I was let go from my job, and I lost my income and my insurance. I was on my own, and I didn't have or do not have a strong family network. So I had to figure out how I was going to survive not only cancer, but no income and no insurance. And I had to work the system. Yes, you could go back and, probably file some charges against the company once they found out the diagnosis and let you go. Or you can work on yourself and try to survive the cancer, which is what I chose to do. I did that, and having survived that, come back in with a new priority in life. Everything changes when you're, going through chemo and radiation and everything else involved. You look at life completely differently, right? Your priorities change. And I knew, Lordy, I survived that when I was battling cancer. So if I'm going to take a leap to write my books, I'm in a better position already. And like I said, I had to believe in myself and trust in myself to say, you can do this. Let's do it.
I think that's so important too, right?
Yes.
It's one thing to believe in yourself, but it's another thing to trust yourself, right? And I think it sounds like they go hand in hand, but they don't always go hand in hand, right? I believe I can do anything. Do I trust myself enough to act on that belief and go for it, go after it? So I find that fascinating as well, because like for an organization to let you go after finding out you have a diagnosis and sever your health insurance, like that's crazy to me.
Yeah, once when I did return, and they tell you that I'm not sure, it's a personal decision. So let the company know that hired you that you had just gone through all this. I wish I had not told the company, the new studio I was working at, because every Friday afternoon, I literally was called in to, how's everything going? Are you okay? I'm like, I was not complaining. I was not saying anything. I wasn't asking for any special privileges. But, when you're getting called to HR every Friday afternoon, you worry that, is this my last day? What did I do? And it just became a burden, to the point where, okay, maybe you can consider that harassment. I don't know. But, I didn't want to go through it anymore. So I left that studio.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Like it does, right? Like if you're battling cancer and you're having this loom over your head.
Yeah. It'd be like the first time they called me in, I'm like, what? Last time I got called in, I got fired for having a diagnosis. Now you're calling, So you have that that fear that, you had after experiencing it first time.
First. So you moved into writing your books. Since you were little, you said you've been writing. Is how your stories come to you similar to how they came to you when you were little, or have they evolved over?
I'm going to say they evolved, because I think, your wisdom and your knowledge of the world changes, right?
Absolutely.
And my first book was a question I've had for a long time. And it was, why do we excavate every mummy we find? Why do we dig them up out of their peaceful slumber, as we like to consider it? And no matter how many we find, we dig them all up, but our graveyards are sacred. Are we disturbing their peace? So Disturbed Tombs, now you get the title, Disturbed Tombs approaches that topic. And I come out with my own solution, which you have to read to find out. But, yes. Right. But that's where that came from. And, and I just did not realize that I was writing a very complicated book. I didn't realize it until my second book, because you go back and forth in Egypt in time within that book. And to see the pharaohs and queens and everything living in their element and then brought forward in time. So that I didn't realize it until I wrote my second book, which was just a straightforward book. And I went, wow, what did I do? The hardest book I could have written was my first book. But, it ended up winning Book of the Year for 2022. So I must have done something right.
Well, and I think it's like, that's such an interesting concept that I have not thought about before, right? Yes. Like, my interest is peaked now, because now, like, I want to read the book, because, like, what an interesting concept to think our graveyards are sacred, and there's, like, laws protecting them.
Right.
But what, like, in 250 years from now, will we fall into the mummy laws, or the mummy zone, if you will? Like, oh, well, they're this many years old, we can dig them up and examine them, sort of thing. I never thought of it that way. Or
under the guise of science. Yeah.
Under the guise of science.
How many do you have to dig up? Come on now. They found 28 in one spot, and they started digging up all 28. And I was just like, why? I'm watching this documentary, and I'm like, do we need all 28? You find another 28 over here, or 30, or we can dig all those up? So.
And is it really for science, or is it for bragging rights, or
the gold on them and all the artifacts on them?
Yeah. That's very interesting. My wheels are turning, Kay, at this moment. So now I'll have to satisfy that itch by reading Disturbed Tombs. My initial thought was I was going to get Disturbing Remains, but I think Disturbed Tombs would be the way to go, right? Because that was your first book.
Yes.
Perfect. So Disturbed Tombs is available on all major platforms. Is it in paperback, hardcover,
and audio books? Yeah,
audiobooks. Something I have not been able to get into.
Audiobooks.
I love
only
reading.
If you drive in LA and you have to sit in your car for 2 hours, or do you?
I live in Montreal, and I'm not going to pretend that it's as bad as LA, but it's pretty brutal, right?
Yeah.
So
right.
It takes a long time to get anywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's a very different, like, I grew up in small parts of Newfoundland, Canada, so we didn't have traffic. We were lucky if we had stoplights. We had stop signs, not stoplights. So, like, it's just, I think it's, when you could drive an hour in Newfoundland, you'd actually go somewhere. But, like, here, you could drive an hour and a half and still be in the same city. Right. So it's that sort of thing. We're going to take a short break, and when we get back, I want to sort of dig in more to your writing process. Does that sound all right? Okay. We'll be right back.
Life in Stitches by C.K. Sims. Available for purchase in paperback and ebook on all major platforms. Partner today with C.K. Sims and Pod in My Noggin to get in front of an audience that cares. You will be supporting mental health stories, tales of resilience, and uplifting content, aligning your brand with bringing goodness, authenticity, and kindness front and center. this spot could be yours. Do you have a story of struggle and resilience? One that you want to share with others and possibly help someone through their own struggles? Find the link in the show description and fill out the guest form today.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to Pardon My Noggin. We're here with K.A. Oliver, author of Disturbed Tunes, her first book. Interestingly, it is written because she was curious about why do we dig up mummies when our graves are sacred? And that to me sticks in my mind. She has released a second in that series called Disturbing Remains. And she has a current book coming out, or another book coming out that's currently at the editors. She writes historical fiction and then contemporary fiction as well. So, Kay, I have questions. You're now on your 10th book that you're writing. So we can say that you've written a book roughly about one per year for the last, say, 10 years, right? What is it? How does it happen? Take us down that journey.
So it happens on several different ways, mainly like if I have a question or what do I think would happen if, and I get an idea in my head. I do not plot out my books. Some people do. I do not. I am the sit down and start writing. I hold very strongly to the theory, just write. Right. The editing stage is where your novel is made. It is never made in your first draft. So, and me being double Virgo, I had to learn, to keep writing. Don't worry. You can go back and change it, instead of trying to do it perfect at the beginning, because you lose a lot of momentum, ideas, feelings, and things that pop up. And I can write many hours at a time. And if I go upstairs and lay my head on the bed and another idea comes to me, I'm like, my dog hates me because I run downstairs and start writing. So I do it that way. Now, Road to Elysium, which we have not mentioned yet and has won many awards and Book of the Year, is a book that I saw a little tidbit on the end of a news cycle, as we do out here in the States. We have that uplifting news story at the end. And I went, oh, this is great. I got to find out more about this guy and what happened and da-da-da. Well, couldn't find anything but a little blurb. And I said, oh, no, this story needs to be written. But so I went ahead and wrote a contemporary fiction about what happened. And it's inspired by a true story. And I brought in all the, hope and redemption and things, relationships that this book has won eight awards for and is up for a 9th. And some people are interested in making a movie from it. Think It's a Wonderful Life meets Blindside. Boom, Road to Elysium. So the funny thing is when the editor first got it, she's like, oh, this is great. Oh, this would never happen. And I'm like, that's the true part of the story. And she was like, what? I said, that's why I had to write it. So, I love mysteries. I like, kind of like whodunit. So you have a little bit of that in most of my books, regardless if it's contemporary or historical fiction. So that's how I write. It comes out, I write. I really don't have writer's block because I never end at a chapter and go, okay, that's it for the day, and next chapter tomorrow. I never stop there. That's not a good place to stop because you lose your momentum. So if you're going to stop, a little earlier than the end of the chapter. And then when you go back in, you go, oh yeah, that's what I was writing. Boom, 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 boom. Next chapter, boom, 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 boom. And
that's fascinating. So I wrote a book.
Uh-huh.
And I wrote it in 2008. I was too afraid to publish it because I lived my life in fear for a really long time. And this podcast, this book, this year, 2024, is very much me stepping out from behind fear and doing all the things that I really wanted to do, right? So 2023 Curtis would not be having this conversation with like a complete stranger on the internet and then posting it for the world to watch. But like you're episode 22 now. So for me, it's like, okay, well, I've done 22 of these. It doesn't feel as scary anymore. And what I've learned is that I really love talking to people and and interviewing and having those conversations.
Sure.
So that is brilliant what you just did there. So you literally, okay, so this is going to hurt my brain a little bit, but I need this. So you just get an idea and go sit at computer, and just start writing with
And
no
just
like
start writing.
plot or structure or anything. Do you
I
know
mean,
where it's going to go?
I generally know in my head where it's going to go.
Okay.
Sometimes, right. And I know the ending. I know how I want the ending to be. And I'm always amazed at how, when I'm writing, sometimes the ending just comes, because I know that I'm writing for the ending and everything comes together.
Okay. So that I do know, usually when I sit down, because I've started a gazillion books. So I have like, when I say a gazillion, I mean 8 or 9, but like they're only like quarter or like say half-ish finished. I'm easily distracted as a person. So, and I'm not, like, I think it's partially because I'm a man and just partially because who I am. I'm not a great multitasker. So if I have, something that's taking up a large chunk of my time, it's really hard to like divert and focus on writing. So like this year, I really wanted to, on my birthday, release my second book, but it's not happening, right? Because I got a contract. It's very busy. I just can't, and I'm maintaining the podcast because that's a commitment I made to myself. So I'm like, it's too much. But so you don't have a structure, but you know what you want to write about, and you know how it ends. And I've never heard this before, but this is brilliant. So you will purposely not complete a chapter or purposely not complete a sentence if you feel like you're getting writer's block.
Correct.
And so like when you go back, like if you now you go out with your friends and then you come home and you go to bed and you get up the next morning and you're like you're going back to write, like don't you have to like read back a little bit to like figure out where you were, what your thought was, or like you're just picking up you're just reading the beginning of that sentence and continuing on?
Correct. And your friends know, my friends know, because often I'll go, that's good for the book. And, they're subject to being written into my book. So absolutely. You as a writer should be a people watcher. You should look at people's flaws, I dump humor into my books all the time when you least expect it. Spielberg thing, right? He takes a laugh to a scream to a laugh. And I kind of do that as well. So I'll go from, oh, you think it's going to be this horrible thing, and then all of a sudden, oh, it's not that at all. Or I don't really foreshadow. So I warn you now, because people have come back and said, you need more foreshadowing, letting people know what's coming. And I'm like, no, I won't do that, because I myself, I pick up on foreshadows like crazy because I worked in Hollywood. And it's like, even The Sixth Sense, I figured it out because I was worried about the cheap costume he kept wearing. I'm like, why is Bruce in the same outfit all the time? And then I go, oh, that's why, right? And but that was, my kind of, if I can find a movie that I don't know the ending to and they surprise me with it, I'm in love with it. But that's very rare. So I try to put that in my books, that you don't get a lot of foreshadowing. You might figure out they're going to get together on something, but you have no idea.
I love books like that as well. That because this is also how my brain works. Like movies, I find very predictable. So very rarely will I watch a movie and be shocked at an ending because I've seen it coming like a mile away. Books, however, also do the same thing. There's an author that I discovered by not on purpose. Someone gave me 2 books of them, And this particular author, and I think you're going to do the same thing, they write suspense thriller books, which is my favorite genre. I should not be reading them because then they put ideas in my head and I have dreams about them. But I do enjoy them. And this particular author, I'm going to name them, but Frida McFadden, she wrote The Housemaid, and The Housemaid is Watching is just coming out. Mind fucked me. I'm sorry for swearing. I apologize. This is not a kid-friendly zone. Literally, because you think that something's going, like it seems so obvious, and then it's not at all what you thought it was. And that is the kind of writing I really enjoy. So if that's how you write, I'm going to be, I'm ordering it today. Let me get off this call. Disturbed Tunes, because now I want to know, right? If that's how you write, and that was your first one. When you're writing a book like Road to Elysium, you said it's based on some true events. How, like, you saw it on the end of a news reel, you said. What were your steps? Like, do you consult with anybody? Do you track people down? Like, how does that work?
I couldn't really track anybody down. Like I said, I went online to find out, how did they, come across this news event? And then if I was going to write it based on the true events, then I would have to really go after them and find out what's happened and how's it happened. But I was inspired by the true events, which is a little bit different.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And I could, even though it was a fantastic story on its own, it needed more. Right. It needed more twists, more turns. It needed to go from point A to point B. And so I decided to go with the inspired and use the main event within the story and take it from there. And, had its own twists and turns and problems and things that happened and why it happens the way it does.
So I'm still struggling here. This is what I told you was going to hurt my brain. So you know how it's going to end. You know what you want to write about. Do these twists come out organically for you when you're writing?
Yes, they do.
Oh my God.
I'm writing and then I go, okay, this is what's going to happen, but I'm going to build it this way so that people think something else is going to happen. And then bam, yes. But remember, I worked in Hollywood. So Hollywood storytelling is a different format, right? It's visual.
Yes.
So a lot of things that you see, you don't put into the screenplay, right? So you see the room, you see that they have a chessboard, so you know that person is strategically minded. You don't have to put that into a screenplay, right? You say what they see, and that's it. And you go from there with the actors, and they present, the character as you want. In a book, you have to write much more, right? You have to write the scene, you have to write what they're looking at, what's going on, their actions, and so. To me, it's easier to do a twist like that.
So fascinating. And so I would say that I am more of a storyteller than I am a writer. If that makes sense, that distinction, yes. Right? Is that I can tell a story, but my writing skills are average, right? So while I didn't have an editor for this book, I will have one for my next one. Because I think an editor is that really great sort of polished, making sure that it's what you're trying to say is being said and using the right words and calling out like stuff that I can't think about. So you say, and I've heard this before, so I'm so fascinated by it. So you sit down and you write an entire first draft without trying to edit. Maybe I have OCD and this is why I struggle.
And then I have a little notebook next to me so that every time I come up with a new character, I write the name down or whatever details I need so that when I write them later on in the book, or all of a sudden, what? That's back, which is what I did in the newest one, Disturbing Remains. I was like, oh, this is going to work in this way. And, you put it together and you get all excited as a writer. But, another thing I like to tell people, because I do writing tips on my webpage as well, start with a novella. Start writing. So, but Disturbed Tombs actually started in a few novellas, which are smaller books, right? They're like 40,000 words or less. And I just practiced with those and worked on them and got critiques and got information back. And then eventually I put them into the big book, put it all together, and wrote Disturbing Tombs and put it together. Stephen King does that. Other writers do that. They flesh out ideas in little novellas. And they're easy to write. They're quick to write. You get your ideas down. You get some feedback. And, then you can go back at any time that you darn well feel like it and write the larger version of it or add to the novella or write a couple and then put them together. Now, that's how I started making movies. I did short films. And my films would be 20 minutes long. If you do 3 of those, you've got a 60-minute film. So I guess I kind of came up with that. I didn't know at the time, but I went in and researched later that many of well-known writer, I believe John Grisham also will write novellas and then flesh out the idea later too as well.
I like this idea. I feel like it's also more manageable if you think about big picture.
And you go through all the steps with the editor and everything, and you start feeling very comfortable about that. You're gaining your writing style. You're learning, oh, I should write it like this. And especially if, I hire my editor, I found on a website that you can hire someone as a one-time thing, right? And we've worked together. Same thing with my book cover guy. And if you get one that wants to support you, they're going to say, you need to start watching that you use this word too often. You need to make sure that, that they know who you're talking about. You need to make sure your dialogue's on a separate line, or, you don't put Kathy said da 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 and Derek said da 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 in the same paragraph. Those are separate paragraphs every time they speak. And you just learn those things because I didn't go to school for writing. I went to school for film. But, there's a lot of little tricks in literature that, I didn't want to learn because I didn't want to be molded into what everybody thinks it should be. I'm that way. And don't give me rules because I believe they all should be broken. And those are the ones, those are the top bust, films that make money are the ones that Dances with Wolves. That was a risk, right? That was a completely different look at Western films. Barbie, completely different look, right? Even though it was a franchise that they had, they could lean on, but it doesn't matter. When you break the mold, you stand out. So don't be afraid of doing that.
I agree. I would agree with that. I think so. This book that I'm working on right now, I discovered that most of my books, most of my, I guess, novellas, if you will, because they have about 30,000, 20,000, 30,000 words in them, but they're not fleshed out. So I think that's a piece I want to might start to add. And I have a good network of people who would read my books and then offer critiques and honestly tell me, they're my best friends and my sister, but they will tell me if it sucks or if it needs, this or that or whatever. But I think, the one of the primary reasons I paused right now is because there's so much going on in my life, and there's this book is going to be the second part is very dialogue heavy because it's through conversation that the sort of real arch of the story comes out through a lot of conversation. But I write books that have a bigger message. I realize this. I do lots of things that have a bigger message, and it's usually human interest or, the Life in Stitches, for instance, is about a young girl who goes off to New York City who wants to own the New York City fashion runways. And she goes through all these ups and downs and sort of, this sort of severe event that happens that she feels destroyed by. And I think the primary message is, in the end, without giving it away, is that there is resilience and showing up for yourself and trusting yourself. Sometimes things don't turn out exactly as you envision, but usually they will always turn out better. Right? In some way. So that's how I write. It's weird, but that's my thing. I think.
You can say the same thing about Disturbed Tombs or definitely Road to Elysium. The bigger message behind it, besides the relationships that I have, where the man and the woman are equals and they respect each other and their careers, is the message about, are we disturbing them? Have we thought about that? Road to Elysium is redemption in the fact that he thinks he's lost everything, and one knee-jerk reaction to a request changes his whole life. So there's always a bigger message, but it is in the story, and like you said, and it fits within the story. Now, you said dialogue heavy. Great, because story should be moved with dialogue and not a lot of description and everything else in the book. So most of my books are also, one might consider, dialogue heavy. I say it in dialogue and I don't write it in description, so that moves your story along better.
So you say it as like the separate lines, quotations.
Right. Well, as she ran across the bridge and the bridge was collapsing, she yells out, and then you start the dialogue, that kind of thing. But you don't have to write the whole thing about, oh, now she's running across the thingy and she's yelling and she's doing this and she's doing that. You put it into the dialogue and you write it like we speak. We do not speak in complete and coherent sentences. We stutter. We get cut off and do ... and someone else cuts you off when you're speaking. So make sure, because I've seen even movies do this where it's like, hey, Steve, ... Well, Mike, ... We don't talk like that. Nobody talks like that. So you have to, study people, how they speak, what they do, and make sure that that is in your dialogue. Write it the way we speak, not the way, proper English is. That doesn't work.
Well, and it's so interesting for people who are listening at home. I had no idea I was getting a masterclass and like tips and tricks on writing today, because I think that that's, for anybody that's at home and watching or listening, like this is some really solid foundational advice for writing. I'm still blown away that you just start and you go. I'm going to try that. Maybe not with this book because I have it mapped, but next book I might try just going through it.
Right. If you don't sit and write, you don't have a book. So, and I always recommend people who are starting to find a place, set up a place to write. I have a writing desk that looks out a window. I have plants. I have things that make me feel good. And I started by writing 15 minutes a day. That's it. But if I was on a good thought, I kept writing. And that's how I ended up doing the 3 hours. And when my dog would say, time to go, so I'd be like, what? And then I look at the clock and go, oh my gosh. But, even it doesn't have to be a big event every day. It can be write a little something and you're going to get moving and you're going to get those pages out.
It's true. Consistently writing, say, 15 minutes a day, it's not going to take you that long to build.
No, because pretty soon you're going to start writing a little longer. Yeah.
Yeah. You can check out K.A. Oliver at kaoliver.com. So I'm going to put it in the description for everybody so that it's spelled out, but it's KAYAOLIVER. And you said you offer tips and tricks.
Yes, I have a blog.
You have a blog on there, and then you can, so what's the name of the book that's coming out that's with the editor right now?
The one that's with the editor right now is Love's Calculated Risk.
Ooh, this sounds fun. That one sounds fun too. So I'm definitely going to purchase Disturbed Tombs, because now my interest is so piqued. And I love the concept. Like, why do we keep digging up mummies' graves? Like, do we not respect them? What? So now, yes, I want to see where you went with that. It was such a great conversation with you today. I've learned things. I made notes. I don't know if you noticed me writing over here while you were.
I saw that.
I'm a note taker. So I will definitely think about like authenticity when writing those dialogue and making sure to write it as we would talk, interrupting each other, that sort of thing. I think I find that fascinating. So what's next for you? I know you're writing a newer book, your 10th book, but like, what is there anything else like for you that you haven't done yet that you're wanting to do?
Well, I mean, if Road to Elysium, if someone picks up the script and runs with it, it's at a couple of production houses right now who are interested in it. That would be back into Hollywood, but from a different angle, right? Because I'm the one that wrote the story. And that would be interesting. And then I took up fly fishing this year because I've always wanted to do that. I've done regular fishing. So I learn one to two things new every year. I have done that for years. And from river rafting to going down in a submarine, whatever it is, I do something new every year. And this year was fly fishing. So
what a great way to live too, right? Like
yeah.
to pick up something new every year. And are you still based out of California?
I am. I'm still in Southern California.
So like Southern California is LA and then San Diego.
Not that low. But
Not that low.
yeah, my dad's 94, so I live right down the street from him.
Okay.
Moved out of the LA Burbank area, Hollywood area, moved down Little South Orange County. He spent 23 years working. Well, he's a veteran of both Air Force and Navy, and then 23 years working on city council and mayor, and a couple of times Lions Club, Boys and Girls Club, you name it. And so I'm here, in fact, we're going to dinner in a few minutes, and just sharing life together at his age, and he's doing very well.
Good. I love that.
Yeah.
I do love that. And I have been feeling a pull towards California for probably about a year and a half. I don't think to live. I mean, and if I were to live, I would want to live in Carmel by the Sea, where Betty White lived.
Like Clint Eastwood. Okay.
Yeah, so that's where I want to live. But I have been feeling this pull because I've been to San Francisco, but that's as far south as I've been. I've never been to LA. I would love to go to LA, San Diego, and drive the coast because it's so beautiful, right?
Beautiful. Mm-hmm.
So, and I just love water. So I think this has to happen in the next year at least for me to get out to LA for a few weeks and just sort of
absolutely.
Not LA, but California as a whole.
Right.
There's certain things in LA that I want to see, but most of it is like coastal California, vineyards and things like that.
Yeah, so you can go LA and drive up to Carmel along the whole coast and just enjoy yourself. Morro Bay is one of my favorite cities along that drive.
Morro Bay?
Morro Bay, Morro.
Bay.
It's a tiny little city. It's awesome. It has its own little aquarium on the piers. It's just a unique, tiny little city. Most people bypass it, which is fine with me because if you're not there, I don't care. But I like it. Good restaurants. Yeah.
So it's like one of those tucked away hidden treasures that you found, but you don't want people to find because you want you don't want them to ruin it, right?
Right. Locals know about it, but it's not popular like Carmel, Monterey, Ventura, Santa Barbara. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I wish you continued success with your writing. I'll probably send you a message once I finish reading Disturbed Tombs. And just, if there's twist in it, like you said, I'm going to probably be like, oh my gosh.
Do you watch any paranormal kind of shows since you like? Well, you know what a spirit box is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
How come they haven't taken spirit boxes into the tombs, into the pyramids? I'm just curious. How come they have not tried that in Egypt? I'm trying to get Josh Gates from, his show, Expedition Unknown. Like, take a spirit box the next time you go to Egypt and see if you can use it. And talk to the mummy. I don't know. Would it work? I don't know. But you have to read this book. So
it's a very good question. Yeah, my wheels are turning in my brain. Gotta breathe.
I've given you a lot to think about.
Yes, you have. Wonderful conversation. I want you to take great care. Everybody head over to kaoliver.com. Check out our books. You can join the bandwagon and purchase Disturbed Tombs with me. And make sure to fill out the reviews and read the blog, and I'll see everybody again next time.
For media and sponsorship inquiries, email info@cksims.com or visit cksims.com and fill out the contact form. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. A new episode airs every Saturday. CKS Media.